Sophomore year hit, and I snagged a solo dorm room, tucked away in the corner like a hidden gem. It was sweet, gave me space to chill with my buds from the floor, but also have some alone time when I needed it. But man, little did I know, that place was about to give me the creeps in a big way. It all kicked off one quiet night. I was grinding through some bio notes when I heard this soft tapping. At first, I brushed it off, but it just kept going, getting louder and more annoying. So, I called out, thinking it was one of my buddies messing with me. But nope, nobody there. Weirded out, I checked the hallway, nada. I figured it was just a prank and went back to studying, leaving the door cracked a bit. But that tapping? It didn't stop. Then, things took a turn for the spooky. The next night, the tapping came back, but louder this time. I asked who it was, but no answer. Heart pounding, I flung open the door, ready to bust whoever was pulling this stunt. But guess what? No one there. Just a glimpse of someone darting around the corner. I chased after them, only to find an empty bathroom. But then, I heard this creepy laugh, like something straight out of a horror flick. That's when I hightailed it back to my room, feeling like I was in some messed up movie. Tapping didn't let up though. Kept going all night, like some freaky soundtrack to my life. Tried talking to my floor mates about it, but they just looked at me like I was nuts. And let me tell you, that place never felt the same after that. Always had this eerie vibe, like something was lurking in the shadows. Creepy as heck, let me tell you. And I still wonder to this day what the deal was with that place.
During my freshman year at the University of Iowa, the first week of school rolled in, and I was just starting to get cozy with my roommate. He was all about rushing a fraternity, and with rush week looming ahead, he had his sights set on the parties kicking off Thursday of that first week. Now, I wasn't keen on joining a frat myself, but hey, I was up for hitting some parties. After all, Iowa was known for its wild nightlife. So my roommate wanted to hit up this low-ranking underground frat on Thursday as a backup plan in case the bigger ones didn't give him the nod. We drove out to this sketchy corner house in a rundown part of downtown, and let me tell you, if it weren't for the noise and cars, you'd never guess it was a frat house. The place looked like they settled for the first dump they stumbled upon. We walked in, and right off the bat, we were greeted by this sweaty dude in a stained t-shirt urging us inside. The party was a mess dimly lit, packed with dudes, and hotter than a sauna. I spotted maybe 2 girls, neither worth a second look. I tried making small talk, but everyone seemed awkward and antisocial. I downed some cheap beer, hoping to loosen up, but it was like drinking water. Then, this hefty guy handed me a tiny bottle, practically daring me to drink it. I obliged, thinking it was just a shot or 2 of something strong, but soon after, things got hazy. I felt dizzy, the room spun, and then darkness. When I came to, I was in some dark room, faint music in the background. I could barely see, but I heard someone messing with a plastic bag in the closet. I bolted out of there, found my roommate, and dragged him out of that hellhole. On the ride back, I told him I was drugged. He nearly called the cops, but I talked him out of it. I didn't feel violated, and my clothes were intact, so I figured I dodged a bullet. Turns out, I was out for only about 10 minutes. Whatever that guy gave me must have been a dud. Thank God. That nightmarish frat party, that's the scariest thing I've ever experienced. During my 2 years at Binghamton University, I quickly found my tribe, and we made it a ritual to hit the town every weekend. But one Friday night in October, with no grand plans in sight, 2 of my closest buddies and I decided to chill in the school's nature preserve by the lake. There was this secluded spot on the far side of the lake where we'd often gather around a fire. It was our little haven, away from prying eyes and campus patrols. The spot was so off the radar that even campus police rarely ventured there. That night, armed with beers, we huddled around the fire, shooting the breeze and letting loose. As the booze flowed, laughter filled the air, and soon one of us was rolling around in fits of laughter on the ground. But then, in the midst of our revelry, one friend suddenly hushed us, We froze, straining to hear over the crackle of the fire. The crunch of leaves and twigs in the distance set us on edge. With a silent nod, we quickly disposed of our beer bottles in the lake, stashed the rest, and braced ourselves. Paranoia spiked as we realized we were exposed, vulnerable to anyone passing by. But this far into the woods, encounters were rare. Yet, the sound persisted, drawing closer. It felt like someone or something was circling us, playing a sinister game of cat and mouse. The eerie echoes of breaking branches and rustling leaves sent shivers down our spines. At first, we laughed it off, chalking it up to overactive imaginations. But as the tension mounted, fear took hold. Then, out of nowhere, a loud thud shattered the night. A branch hurled into our midst, sending one friend bolting into the darkness. Stunned, my remaining friend and I exchanged nervous glances, unsure if this was some twisted prank or something more sinister. But our uncertainty was short-lived. With a cry of pain, my friend took a blow to the face from another branch. In a panic, I grabbed our stash, helped him up, and together we sprinted back towards our dorm. As we reached the road separating the preserve from campus, the footsteps behind us quickened. We ran like our lives depended on it, not stopping until we reached the safety of our dorm floor. Peering out the window, we saw a figure pacing by the woods, retreating only when cars passed by. Relieved but shaken, we laughed off the ordeal, drowning our fear in more drinks. It wasn't until the next morning that the gravity of what happened sunk in. That night, we swore off venturing into those woods after dark. And to this day, the memory of that chilling encounter lingers, a reminder of the darkness that lurks beyond the glow of the firelight. During my first year at university, after unpacking and saying goodbye to my family, my roommate Dale finally showed up. From the start, it was clear he wasn't the most socially adept guy. I extended my hand for a handshake, but he seemed puzzled at first, then awkwardly shook it, barely mustering a hello. I had to pry his name out of him. Dale. I tried making conversation, but Dale's responses were short and awkward, and soon we lapsed into silence, each absorbed in our own laptops. I was annoyed and seriously considered requesting a new roommate. Anyone would be better than Dale, or so I thought. Thankfully, I met some cool kids on my floor, giving me hope. That first night, I returned to find Dale still glued to his spot, lost in his laptop. I turned in, but sleep eluded me as Dale continued tapping away until the wee hours. When I awoke to moonlight streaming into our room, I found Dale sitting on his bed, staring at me. I called him out, and he muttered an apology before laying down. The next morning, he was up and gone before I even stirred. It was orientation day, and while exploring campus, I overheard students commenting on Dale's odd behavior. Ignoring it, I used Dale's antics as a conversation starter, making friends along the way. And when I returned to my dorm, I found out the school had reassigned me to a new roommate. A relief. But that night, as I returned to my dorm after hanging out with my new pals, I found Dale sitting by the door. His silence was unnerving. Later, I discovered he'd snooped through my laptop, a chilling invasion of privacy. I confronted him, but he denied it, albeit unconvincingly. As I prepared for bed, I noticed my belongings had been tampered with. And in the dead of night, I caught Dale rifling through my bag. Confronted again, he feigned innocence, claiming he mistook my toothbrush for his. But I knew better. The next day, with my new roommate in place, I felt a sense of relief. But that night, I was jolted awake by a strange clicking noise. Investigating, I realized someone was trying to pick our lock. In a panic, I called campus police, who swiftly apprehended the culprit, Dale. I recounted everything to them, and Dale was escorted away in handcuffs. I never saw him again, but the memory of those eerie nights still haunts me. A chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk just beyond our dorm room doors. When I was 15, my buddy Anthony invited me over for a weekend sleepover since his folks were away. I biked over, stashed my ride in his backyard, then let myself in through the back door. We spent the night gaming, snacking, and goofing off typical teenage stuff. As the hours ticked by, we transitioned from gaming to watching a movie, then prank calling random numbers for kicks. On one call, I stumbled through my lines, barely holding it together as Anthony cracked up in the background. A gruff voice answered, throwing me off even more. I blurted out some nonsense about borrowing a car wheel, only to freeze when the guy called me out by name. Anthony's name. On one call, I stumbled through my lines, barely holding it together as Anthony cracked up in the background. A gruff voice answered, throwing me off even more. I blurted out some nonsense about borrowing a car wheel, only to freeze when the guy called me out by name. Anthony's name. We freaked out, wondering how he knew, but chalked it up to coincidence. Still, the unease lingered. Later, we heard the front door handle jiggle, then footsteps in the backyard. Panicked, we hid in the kitchen as the intruder entered the house. Heart pounding, I dashed to shut the back door, only to freeze at the sight of a shadowy figure outside. He spotted me, sending me scurrying back to Anthony. We huddled upstairs, cowering beneath his bed as the stranger prowled the house. Silence stretched, broken only by our pounding hearts. Then, a blood-curdling scream shattered the quiet, and Anthony vanished from under the bed, dragged out by the intruder. Terrified, I grabbed a screwdriver and lunged at the man, buying us enough time to flee. We dashed into the woods, hiding until the coast was clear, then raced back to the safety of Anthony's house. With trembling hands, we called the cops, but as we scanned the backyard, we spotted the man lurking in the shadows. He vanished into the woods, leaving us shaken but alive. Years have passed without incident, but the memory still haunts us. Was it connected to the prank call? Maybe. But one thing's for sure. That night was the closest call of our lives. And though we may never know the full story behind that terrifying encounter, it serves as a stark reminder of the dangers lurking just beyond our doorstep. Years have passed without incident, but the memory still haunts us. Was it connected to the prank call? Maybe. But one thing's for sure. That night was the closest call of our lives. And though we may never know the full story behind that terrifying encounter, it serves as a stark reminder of the dangers lurking just beyond our doorstep. My wife and I were locked in yet another heated argument, but this time it reached a boiling point over something as trivial as forgetting to put the toilet seat down. Her relentless nagging pushed me over the edge, and in a fit of frustration, I reached out to my buddy Paul for refuge. He graciously offered his place for the night, a welcome escape from the chaos at home. Paul's spacious house was a stark contrast to our humble abode, a fact my wife often pointed out during our disagreements. We cracked open a few beers and delved into a much-needed bro chat. Paul, ever the gracious host, insisted I stay longer if needed, though I assured him it would only be for the night. I settled into one of his guest bedrooms, surprised to find that he had 3, yet rarely used more than 1. The rooms were all lined up, adjacent to each other, while Paul's bedroom sat across the hall, a peculiar layout, to say the least. Strange noises emanated from the neighboring room, initially brushing them off as Paul's doing. But as the sounds persisted, I grew increasingly curious and decided to investigate. To my surprise, the door was locked. I approached Paul, already in bed, to inquire about the noise. Unfazed, he explained that the locked rooms housed his personal belongings. Reluctantly, I returned to bed, hoping the noises would cease. However, a mere half-hour later, a tapping sound followed by a faint voice echoed from the adjacent room, jolting me awake. Alarmed, I rushed to Paul's room once more, and this time, he took my concerns seriously. Armed with keys, we unlocked the door and entered, greeted by a chilling breeze and an open window. The room was in disarray. Marks on the bed, empty bags in the closet, and valuables missing from drawers. Our shock turned to action as we raced to the next room, only to find a shadowy figure fleeing through the window. In pursuit, we dashed outside, but the intruder had vanished without a trace. Yet, our horror deepened upon discovering the gruesome scene left behind. Blood-stained sheets, a discarded butcher knife, and missing belongings painted a grim picture of the intruder's stay, a chilling reminder of the dangers lurking within our seemingly safe haven. As we grappled with the unsettling revelation, one thing remained clear. Our home had been violated by unseen trespassers, leaving us shaken to the core. And while they may have slipped away into the night, the haunting memory of their intrusion would linger for years to come. The memories of childhood sleepovers, they're etched in our minds forever, aren't they? I'll never forget my first one, spent at my friend Jordan's house when we were both 10 years old. Jordan's basement was like a paradise for us, a haven where we could play video games until the early hours of the morning before crashing on the comfy couches. We were rebels, skipping the toothbrushing routine and diving straight into bed, eager to squeeze in every possible minute of fun. I drifted off to sleep easily, the excitement of the evening still buzzing in my mind. But then, something jolted me awake in the dead of night. The TV, our faithful companion during our gaming sessions, was still on, casting a faint glow across the basement. But it wasn't the TV that caught my attention. It was something else, lurking in the shadows near the stairs. A tall, indistinct shape loomed in the darkness, sending shivers down my spine. I couldn't quite make out what it was, but its presence filled me with an inexplicable sense of dread. Then, as if sensing my fear, the TV suddenly clicked off, plunging the basement into darkness. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing myself to ignore the eerie sensation crawling up my spine. I must have eventually drifted back to sleep, though I don't recall how. It wasn't until later that night that the true terror unfolded. I was jolted awake by the piercing screams of Jordan's mom echoing through the house. With a sense of foreboding, we dashed upstairs to find her in a state of distress, tears streaming down her face. His dad was frantically searching the house, fueled by her panicked cries, but there was no intruder to be found, no sign of forced entry or exit. It was as if the source of her terror had vanished into thin air. As we comforted Jordan's mom, she confided in us, admitting to seeing a tall, dark figure lurking by their bedroom door. It sent a chill down my spine, as I knew deep down that what I had glimpsed in the basement that night was the same sinister presence. To this day, Jordan's mom prefers not to dwell on that harrowing night, but the memory of the shadowy figure remains etched in my mind, a haunting reminder of the inexplicable mysteries that lurk in the darkness.